last week's injuries, red cards, and bombshell squad announcements, there's so much to discuss today on the Rugby Paper podcast. Strap yourselves in as joining us to discuss Australian rugby, Eddie Jones, rugby league converts, Owen Farrell, and much, much more is one of the greatest rugby players of all time, David Campese. Towards the end, we'll do some talk about England and stuff as well. So if you want to hang around for that, you will.
Who? Oh, that's the one. Eddie
That's a very good question.
Oh, that's the one where Sir Clive blamed Eddie for the 2 England losses when he left. Bloody hell! What next? and you gave him an OBE. Sheesh. Hey? Desperate people.
Hey.
Okay.
Tell us what you really think.
Well,
you asked, mate. I'll tell you. What do you expect? I'm going to lie. Say, geez, you got a great team.
Go on, Campo.
Right.
We're not as in bad shape as your lot.
Oh, I don't
know. Here we go. See you at 7. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Well, that's pretty much our intro done, to be fair.
Yep.
Australian icon, one of the stalwarts in that all-time great 91 side, David Campese. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you guys going?
Yeah.
Besides you being late, I thought the English were always on time. Are you actually going to turn up for this year's World Cup, or are you going to start next year?
That's a debate.
It's looking like
or you could speak to Owen Farrell about not to use shoulder in tackles, but he hasn't learned, so he deserves whatever he gets.
Oh, this from the man from the country who gave us Steve Finnane.
Mate, I was playing rugby league when I was still in nappies when he was playing. I got no idea you talked about. Why would a winger go near rucks? Tell me that.
Well, indeed, the game's changed.
Honestly, if there was cameras around in our day, I don't think there would be many players left on the field. Especially the England versus France 91 semi-final in Paris. The absolute, it was shocking, wasn't it?
That was one of the great games I've ever seen. But for all the dodgy reasons.
Exactly. But that was rugby, though. That's how we grew up. That's how we used to play. If you weren't good enough, mate, you go and play another sport. That was part of life.
Brian Smith once told me that the reason the game was so knifey back then was that everyone was running around trying to punch Eddie Jones. Is that right?
Well, there was one game, I won't mention, but there was a game where Eddie was playing for Randwick, who I was playing for, the Ellis played for. And Brian Smith was a goal kicker, and there was a lot of sledging going on. I've never heard sledging like it in my life. But, with Eddie, small man syndrome problems, nothing's changed over life.
Yeah.
David, I was on the phone to you the morning of the Australia World Cup squad. We may as well get into it.
Yep. Okay.
Was watching the.
Can you actually? I don't know. I don't know who they are. Can you tell me who they are?
I was hoping you could tell us about Carter Gordon. He sounds like a comic book hero. I've never heard of him.
Actually, he's actually not a bad player. Young 23-year-old number 10. Comes from the Rebels. Not a bad player, but the biggest concern is he's the goal kicker. He's played 1-2 test matches. He's played with Karevi in 1 game, and he's played with Tate McDermott in 2 games. So the combinations in the backline is going to be unbelievable, because, as you know, in World Cups, goal kickers win games, and combinations is vital. And if you haven't got those, I actually don't know what's going to happen.
Is there a goal kicker anywhere else in the squad, Campo, or not?
Yeah, well, you've got Nick White, who's always worried about his moustache more than anything else. And then you've got Donaldson, who actually played number 10 last year, who's actually not a bad player. But again, we've got a lot of problems in Australian rugby with coaches not liking certain players. I still don't understand the style of rugby we want to play. I'm still mystified. I've been cancelled by Rugby Australia, so nobody talks to me. So that's why you poor guys over there got to listen to me, because no one else does. so I just it's just frustrating, I mean, the game's a great game, but I mean, it's Eddie came back this year, and he went back to his school with the Ellis and said everybody should be running around the ball like the Ellis. A month after that, he said, running rugby's dead. We're going to kick the ball away. Our skill factor is very poor. We know guys like us are allowed to pass on our knowledge, and it's not hard. I mean, professional rugby is a total different animal to amateur. I think we were better amateurs because we love the game and we wanted to be the best. These guys get paid a lot of money. Why aren't they the best? They've got everything. Eddie's got 12 coaches. So if you're not the best player in the world, if you've got 12 coaches, really, what is missing?
A 13th coach, probably.
Well, probably. Yes, probably that's the chairman,
or maybe
the boss.
Maybe a bit of clarity.
Well, I just think it is. And I actually, in 1991, I brought out a book on the wing and a prayer before the World Cup. And my last chapter said, if we go professional, our sport is gone. Then I did it again in 2003. And if you have a look at it, you still got Bill Beaumont running around as president of the IRB or World Rugby. Now, really, I mean, if we want the sport to thrive, we need young. Peugeot would have been absolutely fantastic, but because he's not part of the block, people don't like different people. They don't like people who are not going to agree with them all the time. But isn't that what life's about? You've got to sometimes bite the bullet and say, right, I will give you a chance. But we won't. And look where we are now. We've got rugby league laws in our game. Rugby league don't care about us. You've got Andy Farrell, who's a rugby league player. Ireland's all about defence. Defence, defence, defence. When they beat All Blacks last year in New Zealand, you have a look at the game, they did not commit one player to a ruck, which means 4 All Blacks on the ground. Ireland had 15 versus 11. The game is a very simple game, but it's all about defence. It's not about attack. And unfortunately, the game that we used to play is probably a distant memory. You know, if you look at the old videos, I try and teach my son, Jason, some of the ways we used to play, but he's playing with kids who don't watch rugby anymore, which is very sad in Australia.
David, what you've just said really strikes a chord for slightly sad reasons, those being that I've got nothing better to do in my life. I watched a bit of a rerun of the 91 World Cup final. And we all know what's happened to the breakdown, the tackle area, all that stuff. But that was a numbers game around the ball. There were no hands on the floor. People were generally on their feet. I know there were pile-ups and what have you, but the theory was that everyone stays on their feet. The interchanging of possession in that game was enormous by modern day standards. The actual movement of the game as a game from one end of the field to the other was extraordinary compared to now, because you can't get the ball back unless you're putting yourself in a position where you get concussed.
Okay, I agree, but you have a look at the game of rugby now. Okay, so you have a line-outs. Okay, so you throw the ball to number 10. Number 10 throws the ball, spirals the ball backwards. Okay, then that guy passes the ball backwards. So the opposition tackle the outside centre, not even to the advantage line, behind the advantage line. So all the forwards cannot get to that ruck. That's why they came back. Then you stop, the halfback's got to run all the way over there. He makes everyone clear, right, passes the ball. One guy runs into 2. He knocks him backwards. So the attacking team is actually going backwards. The defending team is going forwards. We've got it the wrong way around. But that's what rugby league used to do. Rugby league in Australia is playing the way we used to, is attack, attack, attack. But we're playing rugby league, where it's all defence, defence, defence. And all people want to do is run through people. Yeah. There's no, you've got some fantastic wingers. If you look at Jordan for the All Blacks, he scored 23 tries in 23 games. I mean, Corabetti for Australia, he's got to go into a 5-metre line-out ruck to dive over to score a try because no one gives him the ball. Can you imagine me? I would never go in ruck. But, I mean, that's the way the game's changed. And you've got 12 coaches. It's all about structure. It's all about this. Let the guys go out there and express themselves. And I've said this many times. I still remember probably the last time Danny Cipriani played for England was at Twickenham. And England were in their 22 against Australia. Danny gets the ball. He runs to the opposition 22. And there's no one there because they're ready for the next phase. They can't anticipate. And that's why Eddie didn't like him. Coaches hate people they cannot control. And that is definitely, especially in the backs, and it's a fact of life. If you can't, like Finn Russell's a great player. He loves taking the ball to the line. Saxton as well. You've got Pollard, got the good bud and the South and the Kiwis. They love going to the line. That's how you get the opposition guessing. But if you have a look at the game, and I can rattle off a lot of games. Last year, if you watched England versus Australia at the Sydney Cricket Ground, the third test, Australia had a line out at halfway. Australia got the ball. It was knocked on. Smith gets it and runs 50 metres. Because what happens at training, they don't train against anyone, so everyone's got to be perfect. All of a sudden, you drop a ball, everyone goes, okay, where should we be? Are we in the right position? You have a look, it's disarray. And all it is really defence. There's no saying, guys, dive on the ball. You've got him, I've got you. And I'm sitting there going, why don't they talk to each other? What is the thing? And we've got rugby league defence coaches because we're professional. I mean, if this Australian team marked the Wallabies 91 or 99 World Club backlines, mate, we would absolutely give them a hide. They wouldn't understand angles, where we run in, which way. They wouldn't have any idea because it's not about up and across. It's actually running into space, running into angles, offloading before the tackle. Since professionalism, 95% of the tries are after contact. When we played, it was before contact. You suck the player in, you pass. Now they want to go off there and offload.
But
it's
David,
total difference.
Over the decades, we've relied on you Aussies to shake things up. You know, you are the innovators because you've had limited playing numbers. You have to make best resources. You guys have, for 30 years, been the innovators. So has this Aussie side got it in them to come up with something a bit different? Because they're going to have to, aren't they, to do well?
Yeah, well, that's the unknown. I actually don't know. I mean, Skelton doesn't even play in Australia, and he's the captain. Like, to me, a captain's got to be a leader that you respect. I mean, these guys are all just thrown together. Eddie's obviously hoping for a miracle. I mean, we have got probably the easiest draw of the World Cup's pools. So, look, I believe, we had a guy called Rod McQueen who's coached the 99 World Cup. I don't think that really helped us because it was a very structured, it was all about structure. He was at the Brumbies, it was about structure. He picked Gregan and Larkin, he wouldn't pick anyone else. So when they retired, we didn't have anybody. So then we started to find someone else. And now, if you have a look at the coaches, who are the coaches? Eddie's a hooker. He's got no idea what happens in the backs. And the thing is, it's not hard to play instinctive rugby if you've got people who want to play and have got the skills. I think the Kiwis are playing a lot better rugby. They play the way we used to play in the backline. And that's the problem because we are still stuck in the twilight zone of the pod system, which the Kiwis invented 5 years ago. France have moved on, thank God for that, because they wanted always to be what the Kiwis were. Then one day they said, no, we're not doing that. We're playing. The French score more tries from counter-attack than any other team, and it's great to watch. That's rugby.
In the great days, David, of the Wallabies, those sides that we were talking about earlier, and this is a bit of a hobby horse of mine on this podcast, I think the All Blacks are playing in the sort of thriller minute style they are, or with the potency, the attacking potency they have at the moment, partly because they now have a footballer at 12. You used to have Michael Liner in '84 playing there. You had Gitto back in the day. You had Tim Horan, obviously, who's one of the very greats. They were genuine footballers.
Well, the thing is, we had, if you have a look at probably not the Kiwis in '87, but if you look at '91, we had Liner Horan. Okay, good playmakers, two. '95 was Joe Stransky and I'm trying to think of his name. Henry LaRue, both number 10s. Yeah. Then you look at 99, we had Larkham and I'm trying to think of what. So we had two playmakers. So if one's down, we still had one available.
Tim Horan again.
Then the game changed. Tim Gorman. Then they changed. Then things changed. And that's because coaches come in, and Rod McQueen was one of those coaches. He came in, he didn't want to entertain. It was about structure, about winning. And I think that put us back for years and years because he wouldn't pick anybody. We tried to find another Larkin when he retired. You can't go and get another player that we've just had. Every player is different. And, look, our problem in Australia is nobody knows who we are. There's no history. We had Saturday we had the 1984 Grand Slam reunion with Alan Jones, and we had the 86 Bledisloe Cup in Eden Park the last time we won at Eden Park. Rugby Australia has done nothing for us. No one knows who we are. All we do is go there and we have a fun, because if it wasn't for Alan Jones, nobody would remember who we are. And that's our problem. Kids don't know the history of Australian rugby. And that's why we are where we are at the moment. That's why the Wallabies go off at a send-off. No one even knows where they are. They've gone. But if you look at South Africa, they had 4,500 people at the airport.
Do they think that Carter Gordon's name is really Gordon Carter? It might be like those old-fashioned programs where they always put the surname first. His name might be Gordon. Call him Gordon, see what happens. But
the thing is also, you've got to understand that at rugby games now in Australia, there's no programs. You go to a test match, there's no programs. You've got no idea. If you don't know who's playing, no, honestly, there's no programs.
God.
Mate, it's diabolical. It's actually, and look, it's very sad because, I was fortunate to play for Australia from my background. I didn't go to a government school, but the people before me put Australia on the map, and we just continued the baton. And now I don't know what these guys, they don't actually care about the history. They're just playing, they're getting paid. I don't know if you saw Quade Cooper after last week's test. They lost by whatever, and there he is in the spa laughing. We never used to laugh when we lost. I was devastated. But these guys laugh and have a chat after the game. That's just it. It's a pay job, mate. They haven't got the passion. When they say we got passion, it's a different passion to what we have. We love the game because it was a fun thing to play. But we were good at what we did, and that's what made us champions.
Well, Campo, the way that the game's going at the moment, when you look at the various financial problems around the world, it may revert to amateurism sooner than later.
I agree, but what's the World Rugby doing? They're supposed to control the game. So what are they actually doing for the game?
Yeah,
tell me. They've got Fiji. Fiji has still got half their players probably playing in England because the clubs won't let them go. So you think of a World Cup, the IRB will say, guys, okay, World Cup year, every player must play for their country. But they don't, because the clubs have got power and they said, no, we want these players. I remember 2007 in France, Fiji played a couple of provincial games in England on their way to the World Cup. And then, but now you've got Australia playing France next week. Next week. Then you've got South Africa versus New Zealand. Who was Samoa? Samoa played against Japan. They played against Fiji, but they're not playing against the big boys. They're playing against each other.
Mm.
But that's not a preparation. So the big boys play against all the big teams, and the little ones play. And then you've got to turn up and give 80 minutes of a rugby against some of the top 8 teams in the world. That's not really no.
And nothing's changed really, Campo. That's the problem is that this sort of triple tier or 2-tier system or however many tiers it is, nothing's changed. And the World Cup draw is, I don't know your thoughts on it, but to have the 4 top teams in the world, actually the 5 top teams in the world, now with the Scots who are definitely in terms of fitness getting to another level. I think you've got those teams in one half of the draw because they do the draw 3 years before the World Cup. Soccer draw's done 6.
But the thing is, what should be happening is whoever the world champions are from last World Cup, you're number 1, you're A. The runners-up are B. You do it that way. You don't put them all in the same pool. No. It's just, but they do because that's it. So what happens during COVID, for example, some teams didn't play, the other ones did, and they just go miles ahead. Look, anyway, but that's not for us to find. That's the IRB's, World Rugby, sorry. That's their problem. The problem is you've got Australia versus Georgia. I don't know who's Georgia, where their players are from. Then you've got Fiji, Wales, and then you've got Portugal. Then you've got a week off. Why do you have a week off in a World Cup? What is this? It's a holiday resort or something,
Yeah, they've extended the World Cup by a week. It's now 7 weeks long. Now,
because they get a break.
And you've got 33-man squads. Yes, you want a bit of a break between the matches, but it doesn't have to be so elongated. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, it's just, as I'm saying, the problem is that we've got the Football World Cup now. I mean, the amount of people watching this is ridiculous. And our Australian rugby team just goes, no one actually knows where they are. And that's a national sport. Soccer, rugby is the 5th sport in Australia now. Because we don't entertain people. The only way in Australia sport to be number one is like we did in the 90s, is entertain. The kids will come. But we don't entertain because I don't know what we do. And no one knows who we are. And that's why the population is not really interested in rugby.
Do you think, David, in the professional age, one of the problems is that there's a lack of identity about the Wallabies in Australia? Is the absence of a meaningful club system?
No, the club system's there.
In France, obviously, the club system is all as it kind of is in England. In Japan, which is one of the few sort of growth areas of rugby in the world, there's a proper league with some promotion and relegation and some sort of local identity and all that kind of thing. And you guys have never really been able to establish that at club level, have you? So you don't get that club.
Yeah, but our club rugby is actually pretty good. The grassroots is pretty good in Australia. Then you go to the Super Rugby teams, which is New South Wales, Queensland, the Rebels. So we've got 5 teams. We can't sustain 5 teams in cricket as well. Well, we haven't got the money. I mean, I remember playing for New South Wales in our day, and we used to play at the Sydney Football Stadium. And if we didn't get 22,000 people, you just break even. Now they're getting 8,000 people. They had Hooper on like $1.4 million. So we had players up and down. But I'm just saying that the problem is now is that we don't have the entertainment factor. And I've been coaching for since 2018, but 2 years now I've been at Newcastle outside Sydney, 2,500 kids. So I coach them. And after training, I say, okay, Johnny, what's your name? What position? Number 2. Who's your favourite player? Haven't got one. Do you watch rugby? No, don't watch. Because it's not on free to wear. So we've got Rugby League on free to wear. We've got Aussie Rules on free to wear. You've got the Matildas on free to wear. And we're on paid TV.
Yeah.
So what happens is we don't have the audience. So for the Bledisloe Cup in Melbourne, okay, the viewership was 500,000 people on free-to-air, streaming, whatever. The Rugby League has the State of Origin, 3.1 million people watch that. Then you've got Aussie Rules on a Saturday, which is just killing it. And now you've got the Matildas absolutely going ballistic. Because we don't entertain. People who love rugby know rugby. And they're sick of this referee, come here, we want to look at this. Oh, mate, he ducked the tackle. No, it's a red card off here. So, we were just in Paris a couple of weeks ago with Medi Olympic, and they had the 75th Oscars de Rugby. So they picked a World 15 team. So there was Francois Pina, Brian Abana, Bucky's Boita, The Beast, Bismarck Duplessis, Dan Carter, Kieran Reid, Smith, myself, Eels, Far Jones, and Jason Robinson. And, we're all sitting there talking, and it's just quite interesting when you get these guys in and you have a look at the style of rugby, what we did and how we entertained. And now it's just totally doesn't exist. It's all about winning. But if you think about the 91 World Cup, Australia had 2 teams, New South Wales, Queensland. So we had 9 Queenslanders, 8 New South Welshmen. And we knew each other all, Angle, we knew everybody. Now you've got 5 teams. Played, they're not taught the same skills. And, kicking this ball away from the base of the ruck is just absolutely boring. Kicking away, thinking you're going to win by kicking the ball away. And it is, but you go and watch club rugby. My kids play rugby. It's the same. Kids do not watch rugby in Australia.
Really?
Sort of touched on 2 things. One is the sort of lack of recognition for the great sides in 84, 86, 91, like you said. And the lack of retention of the Australia DNA. Do you think that there's very much a correlation there between, you take New Zealand, for example, you mentioned Will Jordan. Will Jordan's allowed to do what he does because New Zealand retain their DNA to a certain point. You don't with Australia, not just this side, but, you've talked about the sides in 2018, 2019 as well that haven't managed to retain what that Australian DNA is.
Well, the DNA is from, if you look at, as I said, even before 87, when I first, 82, with the Yellows, we changed the running rugby style. But again, we had the coaches like Alan Jones and Bob Dwyer who allowed us to play that, and we had the skills to play that. Okay, so you've got a guy, for example, Jordan Petaia plays 13 for Australia. He's played on the wing and fullback. He doesn't pass the ball. So if I was marking, it'd be so easy to mark because he doesn't pass. In our days, we had Jason Little, was a very good 13. We had Gary Yellow, a very good 13. Sterling Mortlock. We had guys who could keep you guessing. And I think the DNA has gone many years ago because we are not allowed to be involved and help these guys get a few skills or anticipate. I sit there in games, I said, he's going to kick the ball here. And I said, how do you know that? I said, mate, it's so easy to see what's happening because I used to read a game. These guys, you see the try, the kick across, and the guy dives and the winger's nowhere to be seen. I think, was it last year in Scotland versus France? And France were attacking at 22. Anyway, so from this side of the field, the goalposts are there. So they got to about here, and the outside centre and the fullback just retired.
Oh, Stuart Hogg.
Stuart Hogg. Stuart Hogg was on the outside post. The French wing is in the 5 metre line. They kick across him. He walks over the line. And I'm saying, excuse me, when I played, my job was to watch the last man. That was my job. It wasn't about watching there. So how can you get the defence so bad? Because it's a rugby league defence system. Rugby league defence system, you got to jam in. In rugby, I used to turn and say, mate, you got him, I'll take him. But these guys don't seem to talk. And that's what I mean. I mean, knowledge is very important in life. So you can go to you go to university and you can do history, and then all of a sudden you're 50 years old, you can get a professor of history, can't you? I mean, if you keep on going. In rugby, I played 15 years for Australia, I have 100 caps, and I can't even coach. Not allowed to. So how does that work? How does that work?
Why do you think, David, union, and it's not just, I mean, you can barely find a defence coach at professional level in around the world who hasn't come from league. Why do you think union has felt the need to take so much from league, from dropouts under the sticks and this, that, and everything else? I mean, there are loads of examples. Even the scrummaging, something with which you were not directly related, at least very often, David. I can't remember seeing you at tight head prop, but it's
no, but I did one day pack down at flanker against Josh Cronfeld. He looked at me and he laughed. I laughed as well. I said, mate, I've got no idea what I'm doing here, but I'm here because they told me to come in here. So there we go. No, I think the thing you got to realise, we were amateurs up until 95. So 96 we go professional. So what's the closest game to rugby union? Rugby league. So we got all the defence coaches. Okay, so you got Steve Nance comes across. He's coaching in France. Never played a game of rugby in his life. Les Kiss was a rugby. He's now the coach of the Reds. He's never played a game of rugby in his life. You've got John Muggleton, who coached the Wallabies, never played a rugby game in his life. He's coaching now, and it's all structure. It's all control. Well, that's not rugby, but that's all they know. All they know is structure. The next one comes around and says, guys, listen, forget the structure. If there's a gap there, run into the gap. Try. I don't really care. Go for it. If you make a mistake, get better. It's like these days, you make a mistake, you're not allowed to. In life, no one's perfect. You've got to make mistakes to improve. And if you don't try, how do you know how good you can be?
Look, I don't think you're going to find anybody on this panel who doesn't agree that the rugby leaguing, if you like, of rugby union has been been a deficit to the game of rugby union in a big way. I mean, the idea of these flatline defences came about because of the change in the ruck laws. So basically now what you've got is static pile-ups in which not many people none of the forwards really have to commit in order to get the ball. So it's actually an Australian dispensation, believe it or not, where we had the idea of going forward in rucks and mauls changed to use it or lose it.
Yeah.
And was the beginnings of, if you like, the rugby leaguing of union, because you started to get static, loose ball positions, if you like, and players were able to spread across the field, and you got the flatline defense that you've got in league. And from that point, concussion issues are a part of it, because you've got two lumps, or hitting one guy, etc., usually head on. Whereas a lot of the tackle that you were doing was probably using the touchline, and on the diagonal. So, all these things have happened. They've happened on World Rugby's watches. All of us on this panel have written at length about, the difficulties that it's caused, and nothing happens basically, because the game is predicated on money now. They see where they think that they're going to most money, and as you say, the game's beginning to atrophy. I mean, you're talking about the problems that in Australia. We've got massive problems here in terms of the numbers of young adult males dropping off the game. Really massive. Drop.
Well, look, I think that's it's hard, because even New Zealand are struggling big time, believe it or not. They are in big trouble in New Zealand, because all the kids are watching basketball now. They're watching other sports. Where before, like even in Australia, you go to a club here and they've got 5 TVs. One's got Aussie rules, one's got rugby league, one's got basketball, one's got ice hockey or something.
Yeah, no, it's soccer in in your parlance is big now. I mean, that's
it is. But why do we go and get a rugby league law like a goal line dropout? What has that got to do with rugby? Because somebody said, "Oh, this would be good for the." How's it good for the game? The thing is, if I was the referee, what I would change would be, if you get an advantage in the opposition's 20 half, you've got 3 phases to use it. We're not going to go for 25 phases and go, oh, we haven't gone far. Let's go all the way. Really? It's like in basketball. In basketball, you've got 3 seconds to shoot in that circle. But in rugby, you can have the ball for 25 minutes.
You've got endless advantage, basically.
You can do. And then when the referee says, oh, no, it's no good. But the other thing that really annoys me, you're on your own try line. You're defending. And the referee says, I've advantage. I've got, mate, where can these guys go? Where do you want them to go? They're on the line. And they always look, but they look for something. They actually look for the penalty. Instead of saying, guys, just get back. Come on, get back. No, it's like Wayne Barnes. I can't stand the guy. He thinks the game's about him. He actually thinks the game's about him, and it's not. He's made so many mistakes and cost so many teams a win and loss, but then he's a superstar, really. And it's really frustrating, because no one gives a shit about the referees. Yeah, but people do not go to a rugby game to watch a referee. They come to watch 2 countries play.
Campo, I think Barnes is actually a good referee. I think a lot of the referees have, they're stitched up by the, by the laws that they've got to referee under.
I agree.
They're under instruction, basically, and if they don't adhere to the instruction, they're not going to be around.
Yeah, but I mean, I agree with that as well, and I just think that the way the game is played now, there's too much interference from the guy in the TMO. There's too much. Oh, we should have a look at that. Just go back, and there's a neck roll. What's it, mate? If you have a look at it, say, well, mate, what's he supposed to do? Sorry, mate, I can't grab you around there. Can can you slow down so I can tackle you? Mate, these are guys that are 120 kilos. And when you step, and most of the people know, like, I must admit, I don't really know, because I only made 4 tackles in 15 years, so I'm not an expert. But if you're about to tackle somebody, you get ready, you aim, and if he steps, you can't change your set. And that's where a lot of the problems have been. But the referees say, oh, mate, sorry, it's too high. I said, well, mate, circumstances, have a look. And, when we were in Paris, and, there was a lot of the guys who, Bismarck Duplessis, so can you imagine, like, the game now? So you're going to come to the World Cup, okay? You're from London, you're going to go over and watch England play. You get there in the first 5 minutes, An England player is red carded. You go, oh shit. Okay. So you lose. You've just spent so much money to get there, so much money to the hotel, so much this because of one red card. Now you sit there and you go, oh, mate, really? You've come all this way. So the game of rugby is a physical sport. And the problem is, the reason why it's so slow is two things. The halfback dawdles to the next ruck. He doesn't sprint. And what happens, that's why it's all slow, get your feet out of the way. But the other very interesting statistic would be 99.9% of coaches in world rugby are all bloody forwards. No, seriously, have a look. You tell me, you have a look around the world.
Fabien Gaultier would be the exception, and Sean Edwards.
No,
and France are the best looking team to watch, aren't they? So there's maybe
and Townsend, yeah. But I'm just saying, everyone else is forwards. What would they have? No, they're not interested in playing running rugby. They just want to win. They just want to play as board and shit. They don't care. And the problem is the crowds don't care.
David, you undersold yourself on your tackle count, because you made that high one in the 1991 World Cup final, which was the turning point of the game, and won you the trophy. You played that day like a prototype Owen Farrell. Unbelievable.
But I didn't tackle anybody.
You just went high.
But no, I didn't go high. What was the laws of the game back then?
Oh, yeah. Under the laws, it was fine back then.
Oh, thank you very much. I didn't tackle anyone high, but you didn't notice. Go back and have a look at what I did, and have a look what Will Carlin did. Trump, he sort of my head, but that's okay. No one saw that. It's fine.
David,
of course not. Of course not.
You were like Brian Lima out there that day.
Chiropractor.
we were so tired mentally, mate. We were lucky to actually last 80 minutes, I think. Oh, it was very difficult.
Campo, as we're back in 91, you got to tell us about beating the Kiwis in Dublin and your try and your magic pass, which I'm sure I saw you do in Hong Kong. 84, 85, I was out there one time and you won it. And you were doing all that sort of stuff then. It was straight off the Hong Kong paddock. But what a match. And I mean, that was a match which really made your reputation, wasn't it, or not?
No, well, that was probably towards the end of my career. I think I was about 26, 27. Look, what happened was I played New Zealand 29 times. I won 8. Okay, believe it or not, that's a bloody good record. Some people have never won. So in 91, we played them in Sydney. We beat them 24-15. And we did play England, who were the Triple Crown, and we beat them by 40-something points. Anyway, the 2 weeks after that, we went to Eden Park and played the All Blacks. We lost 6-3. So out of those 29 times, the only time I knew we would beat the All Blacks was after that game in Eden Park in 91, because I could just sense they were a bit old, they weren't the same, and a lot of those guys were there from 87. You know what I mean? 4 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And I just knew, I was fortunate that my best rugby was always played in Europe, because there was no pressure from the press. In Australia, mate, you made a mistake, you're on the front page, the back page, they blame you and all that. But in Europe, it was totally different. So I was really relaxed, played. And Nick Farr-Jones, this is what I talked about combinations. So Nick Farr-Jones and I played. I scored 64 tries. I think he was involved in about 49 of them. And the reason is because he knew when I called, he knew something was happening. So the more combinations, the easier the game is. So when I came across that angle, I saw JK, I saw Wetz and that, and I looked outside and I had Phil Kearns. I said, mate, you're not getting the ball at all. So I just ran for the corner and dived and scored. The second one was about, I was actually going to kick the ball through, but it bounced up and I saw Timu. So I had to put Timu, as I stepped one way, I saw Tim coming out of the corner of my eye. I stepped that way, then stepped back and he called and I threw the ball. So it was a pretty simple pass for him.
Yeah, it was a
genius pass, Campo. Don't underplay it.
Brent's pass.
Well, I'm just telling you.
Brendan, your imitation of Campo's pass was straight over the back of your head.
Yeah, sorry, it was more.
Campo's pass.
That's how you used to play 7, just right in the air. Someone was there. But that's how we used to train.
To him.
But that's how we used to train.
Yeah.
Bob DeWye would say, train righto, backline, off we go. I'll blow the whistle. I want you just to throw the ball in the air. Someone had to be there. That's how we used to train.
Yeah, but it was
because that's the way Bob wanted to play the game.
Yeah, but you know, in that split second, Campo, I don't know how many times you've done it in training or whatever else.
Never.
In that split second, pass was something absolutely special.
Well, it worked, but the thing is, I never practiced it at all. Believe it or not, never. No. It's like the goose step. I never practiced. I just used it.
But just one of those things at the moment. Tim Horan anticipated it. So not only did you come up with it, but Tim knew what you were doing. He was on the same wavelength.
But the thing is also, apparently Tim said, I think someone said to him, Tim said, he's going to follow me through the World Cup. If you look at the Argentine game, I think there was 2 tries. One try, he followed me. He knew whenever I got it, something's going to happen. So that's what I mean. That's what players haven't got. They haven't got that instinct and going, actually, I might just follow here. Something might happen. You watch what happens. Someone makes a break and they're ready for the next phase.
It's
interesting. I don't think something's going to happen.
We had Willie Anderson on a couple of weeks ago, David, and he talked about the fact that another forward, I'm afraid, but he talked about how excited he was about the way that 2 teams were playing. One's France, the other one's New Zealand. And he was talking about that ability to follow the ball, flood the gap, and actually get players in support reading each other. And he said that what Ireland were doing was basically all the players, rather than reacting to what was in front of them, what they're doing is they're absolutely a sort of robot side in a way, that they're going to get in position for the next move rather than actually reacting to what's in front of them. But that France and New Zealand are doing that. They are playing, I suppose the word is heads up rugby or whatever.
It is. I mean, you got to understand. It's about what the coaches allow you to do. That's the thing. It's not about the players. The players. I mean, Dupont's out. I think he injured himself. I mean, that's a massive blow for France.
Intermac.
Intermac. Sorry. I mean, that's a massive blow. You know. I mean, but that's what happens. You know, you've got to find someone else. But if you have a look at the French B team played against Scotland, I mean, they've got some great players.
Yeah,
but people don't understand. The World Cup's a different animal. It's not a test match like last week you're playing Scotland. This is the Rugby World Cup. It's a different pressure, you know, and that's why combinations are vital. Sometimes something's going to happen. You're going to have to react to it. But the Kiwis have got some really good players. They've got great combinations. South Africa are going to be there as well. They've got a very good team. And France. I mean, but as I said, like Andy Farrell's a rugby league player. You know what they're going to do. You've got to try and upset them. Don't play the way they want you. You can only play as good as the opposition lets you play. So if they've got a really good line of defence, you say, guys, how are we going to get them to think? Right, do we have to do a chip? Do we have to do our first chip when we get the ball? Think of, will they run or will they not? You've got to be smart about the game. You can't just play the game because that's what they want you to do. You know, and as I said, they don't commit it to ruck. So maybe you get 2 of those 3 players as you go, grab one on the ground. So there's 2 or 3 on the ground as well. So then it's an equal number. But that's all they do. You can see it's easy to see what their defence pattern is. And that's what I mean. You've got to think about if it's not working. Okay, so I remember in 2019, I was in London on my way to Bangkok, then to Japan. So the game at the airport was Ireland versus Japan. And I don't know if you remember, 60 minutes of the game, Japan's winning easily. So what do you think Ireland did for the next 20 minutes? The last 20 minutes of that game, what do you think they actually did? What do you think the Irish team did?
They probably mauled and just trucked it up, did they?
They did exactly the same they did for the first 60 minutes because they can't change the game. Nobody can change. They do what they're told. And that's what they do. They train. So when I lived in South Africa, 2000, I think it was 14, 15, maybe 16, the English Saxon team came to Durban. They played South Africa A teams. And Richard Hill was the manager. He came to Durban. I rang Richard and I said, mate, is it okay if I come down and watch training? And I took my son Jason and Danny Cipriano was playing. The England team trained for 1 hour and a half with not one coach. all scripted. You knew exactly every play, what was to do. And I'm sitting there going, this is bizarre. Because if you drop the ball, what are they going to do? What are they actually going to react? But they didn't. They knew exactly what to do. And that's when I realised the game has changed. Because they're just like robots. They just have to be in a position. And that's what happens with the game. These coaches have only been taught one way. So you can't find any footage of our rugby on TV in Australia at all. There's nothing from the Grand Slam World Cup 91. There's nothing. There is no footage. It's only from 2000 and not even 15, probably 19, you might get a couple of games. That's it. There's no history here. So no one knows where we've started from, what we've done. Which is sad.
Yeah, that's really sad.
Is there not even any footage of Gareth Chilcott hitting Nick Farr-Jones at Twickenham?
No, I didn't see that either.
Neither did Nick Farr-Jones.
Oh, well. No, well, that's part of the game.
Maybe Nick should check it out on YouTube. It must be there somewhere.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to go and put it in. But I mean, I've been trying. I speak to a lot of John Infidel about from BBC's Five. And I said, mate, I'm trying to find, because I was fortunate to play a couple of Barbarian games at Leicester at Easter, Christmas. You know, when they had that Easter game where they had the Barbarians played Leicester, and they had the Leicester team used to have letters on the back of their jerseys. Anyway, so there was one year, I'm trying to think what year it was, and I got a message about probably 8 months ago. During one of the games, some guy came on the oval, climbed the goalpost and sitting on the crossbar. And there's a photo of me laughing. This is during the game. Anyway, so the message came, the guy actually died. And I'm going, it's sad. I remember that day. And I said to John, I said, man, I'm trying to find a copy of those games to show my son. I said, this is how it was. You know, I played one year where I remember that I was playing in Italy, and I had what's his name? Paul Ackford. Paul Ackford? Yeah, the big copper. Yeah. He picked me up from the airport. And drove me to Leicester, and his wife, Susie. And then at the end, Susie said, actually, you're not a bad guy. And I said, no, I don't think I am. Because I was an Aussie and everyone thought I was a bit of an arsehole. She was just, you're a pretty good guy. I said, yeah, thanks, that's very kind of you. Anyway, so we played, and the backline was, it was Frank Manel, Dennis Charvet, Jean-Baptiste Lafont. You know, it was a great backline. You know, we had a great time. And I remember before the game, I was marking Rory, and Rory Underwood's wife came and said, David, please do us a favour. Please don't embarrass Rory. And I thought, okay. So anyway, in the second half, I was burning down the sideline. Rory's come along, so I've stopped. He's right in front of me, and I scored under the post. So I said, shit, I don't think she's going to be able to do that. But then the next year I played, and we had Les Cusworth and Dusty Hare was playing. So under the goalpost, I get the ball, our ball. I step Les. I come up, and there's only Dusty Hare, and all of a sudden, someone's tripped me from behind. And I've got, bloody, who's that? And then Les said, mate, I didn't want you to make a fool of my mate. And I said, that's okay, no worries.
I thought you were going to say it was Rory Underwood's wife.
No, probably not, no. But that's the spirit of the game. That's how we play, you know. I mean, it's just part of, those games are great games because everyone's there for a lot of fun and you do things that you don't normally do. But that's, you know, even trying to get footage of that stuff. I mean, people would love to see all that action, the fun we had, but they don't. There's no footage.
That's a great story, actually, David, because that makes you the only wing in history not to run round Dusty Hare.
Well, true. Even though he was about 40 years old by the time I got to play against him, that's not too bad.
What we have got footage of, David, is you doing your keepy-uppy. You know when they did the Haka in 91? And you're off in the corner doing a bit of keepy-uppy. Was that predetermined, or were you just so pissed off with it you just thought you'll take yourself away from this nonsense? No,
you've got to realise I started in 82, so I've been watching the Haka since 82 to 91, and we weren't told anything like now. Okay, we want to do the boomerang, or we want to do the arrow. I mean, really, who cares? I mean, the whole idea of the Haka is for the crowd. It's for them to show it's a challenge. So if you have a look over the years, the Haka's been to a home, that was it. So compared now, it's like, it's a different animal. But we were just allowed to do what we wanted to do. So I just thought in the World Cup, it's bloody cold in Ireland, so just kick the ball around. If you have a look behind, Nick Farr-Jones was actually about 5 or 6 metres behind the team as well. It was not a big, I think it's great for the game, but I dislike it now because they want you to do it. Then we'll sing Sweet Low while they do. I said, if you want them to do it, let them do it, and you do what you want to do. Yeah. But in those days, I just said, well, I'm not going to stand around. I mean, I marked, as I said, I played them 29 times, so really, I could have probably joined them. Exactly, yeah.
But you're almost back to your coaching point. You have to be coached how to receive the Haka. You have to stand perfectly still. You can't move. You can't smile. You can't do it. You can't advance. You can't go back. It's all coached.
Well, but if you look at Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga, they all do the same as well. Mate, I think it's great for the game. That's their tradition. Why should we lose tradition because someone doesn't like it,
But just as I said, do what you want to do as well.
Well, freedom of speech, mate. That's what I'm claiming.
Yeah.
For a jog around the field, that's the best answer.
Oh yes, yeah. Especially when you win, it's great. Yeah.
Would you do the same to today's Haka then?
Well, it depends on what the team does. As I said, the team, we did what we wanted to do. And I don't know if you saw, but we played, I think it was 92, we played at Ballymore, and Sam Scott Young winked at one of the All Black forwards. So that's what I mean. So you always get the forwards, mate. They all think they're bigger than what they are. Yeah, whatever the team has to decide, mate, we do what the team does. But back then there was no real set, this is what we have to do. And all the other ones I used to watch. So yeah, but I'm just glad we won because otherwise I would have been a bit of shit. But it's quite interesting because I've got a video where I think it was 2015. Some guy decided to put a picture, an artist, and he picked the world's greatest 15, and the Haka was done. So Sean Fitzpatrick and Zinni actually performed the Haka for me, to myself, in this video, because I didn't face them in 91. So but that's what I mean. But that's the fun. That's what rugby's about, mate. That's why we've lost a lot of that. I mean, we've just lost a lot of that camaraderie. You're playing against guys. Stu Wilson, who I had no idea who I was marking in 82. We're all good mates. And I saw Will Carlin with Robert Jones last week on Twitter. Mate, but that's what it is. Most of my friends are overseas, because I travel the world. I lived everywhere. Rugby is a very unique sport, but I don't think the administrators understand what sort of sport we have. And it's very sad,
One thing we spoke about very briefly the other day was during the Rugby Championship, the Capro Panga, which is the controversial Haka with the throat slit gesture that was taken out, has kind of seemingly made a return very subtly, and it was Artie Survey. Maybe it was against the Wallabies. He did, went full throttle.
No, it was against. No, he did against the Rebels. He got sent off.
Well,
sorry.
But as in during the Haka for New Zealand, he went, full send with the throat slit gesture, and I just made of that. It's sort of making a return, still being a part of the Capra Tango. Yeah,
look, I just think to me, it didn't really bother me. I mean, they can dance and do what they like. We're there to play rugby. As long as we win, I don't care what they do. They can do it 20 times if they like. But that's just the way, if the IRB allows them to do it, let them do it. I mean, it's part of people. I actually believe now in rugby, I think the only time the All Blacks should do it when they're at home. Because if you go to Cape Town, South Africa, it's like an All Black home test. Because all the colours back then supported, in apartheid, supported the All Blacks. So I don't mind them doing it. If they want to do it, they can do it. Maybe if they make the World Cup final, if they want to do it, great. But if you let them do it in silence. And then if you want to sing whatever, you sing whatever. But have respect for both teams, not just because swinging Sweet Chariot at Twickenham, they're doing the Haka. I said, well, you want them to do it, but then you want to drown them out by singing what you want to sing. So be realistic. You know, I'm for everybody to enjoy the game, but if they want to do it, mate, go for it.
David, could I just pick your brains a little bit more on this current squad? Let's sort of return to 2023. We've touched upon Skelton. One thing that concerns me about him being captain, and when I was watching that live feed, my jaw kind of dropped at the choice, just because I said to you on the phone, I thought Jones would go with someone left field. He'd go that far left. Do you see a leader? I know he plays his rugby in France. My concern is he'll never play a full 80, which a guy that size, it would be a big ask for him to play 80 minutes. Do you see a leader in him?
Look, if I think when you, like, my experience at World Cups is you need someone who under pressure is going to take control. And I don't think Skelton, I've watched him play and he's not a leader. He doesn't lead by example. And as you said, will he last 80 minutes? Look, it's hard. You've got young number 9s, young 10. You've got a backline of really individuals and not really connected, if you know what I mean. They don't play as a unit. They're all individuals the way they play. Look, you know, Hooper, who hasn't played his best rugby for the last couple of years, but still, should they have taken him as captain? Because, again, you know, he's played 125 tests. So it's not too bad to play that many, but then just to leave a guy out. Quade Cooper, on the other hand, you know, if you look at that last test, he dropped the last ball that they got the scrum and kicked the guy to win. So you go, well, mate, you know, he's a good player, but the problem was probably too high risk. Again, Slipper was captain. So I don't know what Eddie's thought was, but Eddie's always like that. He always picks someone who's probably lazy, a bit lazy, and says, mate, you're captain now. So probably makes him want to play better. That's what he's hoping.
Yeah.
But again, you know, there's not, if you look at that scrum, the forwards, there's a lot of individuals, not a team. You know, if you look at the two locks, you know, if you look at Ackerman and Dooley, you look at those history, you look at Retallick and Whitelock. If you look at Etterbeth and the other, like they've got combinations. The French are the same, the English the same. But that's what you need in big games. You need guys to support each other. So I think, you know, just say Skelton does go off, who's he going to make captain?
I'm quite interested in the Skelton thing. I think he's been given a hospital pass. I don't think there's any question about that. He hasn't captained anybody up till now, I don't think. But I get something about it. I do think he leads by example, Skelton. I think that the performances he's put in for La Rochelle over the, you know, obviously they're the European champions, and I think that the performances that they put in, he's been absolutely central to them, and he has played 80 minutes in those games. I'm pretty sure both those finals, he's pretty well seen them out. I think he's a real force of nature, and the other thing is that he understands, having spent now 3 or 4 years in France, he understands France. Or aspects of France. So I think that that's probably why, and probably speaks French to a degree as well. So I think
that's very smart, because we don't know that out here. See.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? Like, you've seen him,
yeah,
and that's why players. I remember. I must admit. Sorry, I'll go back. I remember in 1984. I was in Queanbeyan down in Canberra playing in 83. And then 82, 83, and then I played in Canberra, and I played for a club called Queanbeyan against West. And there was this Welsh guy called Ackerman playing for West. This is in 1984. And I'm sitting there going, every time I pass the ball, he absolutely whacked me. I'm going, mate, what is your story, you know? But what happened was, and it happened with Moriarty in 82, 81, the Welsh would send out a couple of players knowing Australia's going to come to Europe. So they work out who the players are. So Moriarty went to Sydney, where all the best players are. So Ackerman played in Canberra. So anyway, so when I played for Wales, there he is. So what they did, they'd come back and say, right, these are the players. This. So it's like a scouting thing.
Yeah.
So maybe Skelton's the same. Skelton's played in France. Maybe because Eddie says, mate, basically you're a lazy bum. I'm going to give you captain. I want you to prove yourself. So that's what he does. And he plays with your minds. The famous story is that I'm just trying to think. This halfback played for England. Played for Saracens.
Oh, Ben Spencer.
No. This is 2003 Rugby World Cup. There was
Kieran
Matt
Bracken?
Dawson and
Kieran
Bracken. That's right. Yeah. So anyway, Kieran and I spent a lot of time with each other. And a couple of years ago, we were in Leicester, went back to London, and he was at Saracens when Eddie was coach, and he was talking about Eddie, and he said that one day after the game, Kieran Bracken's walking off, and the announcer says, and the player of the day is Kieran Bracken. So he's very proud walking off. Eddie Jones comes up to him and says, mate, I see your dad picked you as man of the match, eh? And they just walked off. So Kieran's there going, oh, shit, did I really deserve that? That's what he does. He plays. And I think didn't he coach England and give Dylan Hartley the captaincy? He was a bad boy.
Yeah,
That's what he does. He likes that. He likes doing that. He wants people to say, mate, what the hell? Don't worry, mate. It's all right, mate. Oh, I know what I'm doing. He does know what he's doing. He's not stupid. But I just think the problem is you've got to go into a World Cup with a world-class goal kicker, because if you don't, it's one kick can lose you a game, and that's vital. If you have a look, the French guy never misses. Some of these kickers don't miss goals at all, so that's Mwunga doesn't miss either. So you've got that.
You could argue, David, that the Springboks are going to go in without a frontline kicker, because they've got Kesdin Colby kicking. You've got Faf de Klerk kicking.
I still don't know if Pollard's going. It's who knows. They said that someone else has done a calf muscle. It's amazing, the calf. So I'm not sure if Pollard. They said he might be. Are they playing Scotland in the games? The New Zealand, is South Africa? Have they got Scotland?
Yeah.
They've got Ireland.
Yeah, they've got
Scotland, South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe they said he might be ready for that game. So who knows? But I mean, when you haven't played a lot of rugby, I mean, it's World Cups are a different animal, as you know.
Is that to say, with your goal kicking concerns, David, that you feel that Quade would be a world-class goal kicker for Australia now?
No.
Okay.
I think the problem with Quade was he hasn't played enough in Australia. And I think last year he played, and again, he throws those 30-metre cutouts, and the only person who read the ball was the Japanese player who scored under the post. So, it's not, you can't do that. Look, I think if somebody got hold of him early and said, mate, listen, but see, this is the problem when you've got flair players. And the other guys who flair player is Willie LaRue. If Willie LaRue played for any other country, he'd be the number one superstar in the world. But because he played in South Africa, very structured, they don't know what he's going to do. So he's got to try and create all the time. Where if you're a creator, you need people to give you angles. If you run a crossfield, that's demonstrating, mate, I want you to give me a short ball. That's what you learn, And when we're playing with the Ellas, the amount of tries have just changed an angle. I said to Gary Ella when I was playing the backline, I said, mate, you throw the ball into space, I'll get there. Can you imagine guys saying that now? That would never happen. But that's how we used to play. That's how we used to read the game. And
Who are
that's
the
what
great
I mean.
wings? Who are the great wings now, David?
Now, I think you got Colby's unbelievable.
Yeah.
You got Jordan who's scoring tries left, right, and centre. You got the French, the French winger. Yep. Then you've got I think that's Brown Clark. Caleb Clark's not a bad player for New Zealand if he gets ball. Korobetti is a different sort of player. He's a rugby league player. He runs very strong, but he hasn't got the smarts. Probably not the right word, but his knowledge of rugby is not great, if you know what I mean. He's a league player playing. Look, I don't know if England's got that young guy who they brought on tour last year, the guy who plays...
Henry Arundel.
Yeah, is he in the squad at all?
He's in the squad, but they don't ever pass to him, so we don't know if he can do it.
So it's probably the same as Rory Underwood. He played no one passing the bloody ball. So why have wingers? Why have wingers? If you've got someone who's got mate, I'll be there. Just say, mate, off you go. Let's follow. If you've got someone who's got talent, you give them the ball and just say, mate.
It was the name, David, of the famous George Harrison album, wasn't it? All things must pass, brackets, except the England back division.
Well, if you think about 91 World Cup again, you go and have a look. Rory Underwood got the ball in the first minute. He had no idea what to do with the ball. But if you go back, you got to go back the week before when they played Scotland. So they played Scotland, which is when Gavin Hastings couldn't kick a goal or save his life. And we were in Ireland, and we were watching this game. And it was pretty, I think it was 9-3 or 9-6.
Yeah.
Anyway, so after the game, the commentator said, we just go into the English dressing room. We've got a special presentation. And there's Will Carlin says, today was Rory Underwood's 50th test, and gave him the match ball. I'd said to the guys, it's the first time you've seen it today. But then he comes to the final. He actually gets the ball in the first minute. He goes, oh, shit, what do I do with this? So... You know, the problem was with England 91, we beat them that year by 43 points in Sydney. They tried to run the ball then. So they tried to play their style. It didn't work. That's why when they got to that final, they tried a few different things. And I must admit, they played some pretty good rugby. But when you have been starved of the ball all the time, where like Gus got the ball, he tried to do everything himself. There was no teamwork. And that's what I think their biggest problem was. I mean, they played a lot better than us, but we were just lucky to defend and just keep them out. You know.
You mentioned that moment, going back to the Quade Cooper thing, and I felt was very Eddie Jones, was that moment where he knocked on against the All Blacks and they obviously went on to win. When Eddie was with England, we saw instances where we had a guy called Alex Ozovsky who missed a tackle against Japan, who then got hooked, and he never played for England again under Eddie and still hasn't played since. Danny Kerr was out of an England shirt for like 5 years after he had a poor start to a game against Australia, got hooked on 30 minutes, and then he was done. Did you feel that, well, I guess what I'm asking is, not drop that ball? Do you think he would have been in the squad? Do you think it's a very sort of Eddie, just pull the trigger at seeing a moment like that?
Yeah, look, again, we don't know what coaches think. You know, I mean, it's a lot. As I said, if you ask what sort of style of rugby we play, I've got no idea. I actually sit there, I've got no idea what we're trying to achieve. You know, at least when we played, we had a great backline. We had a good forward pack, great backline, great flankers. You could play to a style. You knew there's someone always there. Now, the ball goes to the back. You've got Callaway, who's a good player, but he doesn't pass the ball. Then you've got Mark on the other wing, who I would play at 13. He's a winger at the moment, but he's very hard to tackle. I don't know if you noticed, they can't tackle him. He runs good angles. I'd put him at 13. Because if you can go at 13, suck two players and create space. But the problem is they do not pass the ball.
Who would you put at 13?
Mark, he's played. Yeah, he's a Fijian name. He plays for Australia at the moment.
He scored two against the one who scored two against Wales in the autumn.
Ah, right.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, Marky. Yeah, they call him Marky Marks because they can't pronounce his name. Yeah. But anyway, he runs good angles, but he doesn't pass the ball. And the problem is, in the backline, you've got to pass the ball to somebody. Because that's what a backline is. You've got to have the combination. And that's the problem. They're individuals. So the biggest thing that might beat Australia is they're not a team. When the pressure's on, some guy's not going to pass the ball. Yeah. He's going to think he can score himself. And you cannot do that at that international level.
Well, it'd be interesting.
That's the scary part, you know. Because
you've got Australia who aren't a team, and you've got England who aren't a team, and you've got Wales who are sort of trying to cobble together a team as well. So it's a pretty interesting half of the draw.
Well, I think you also got to realise that I see the Welsh have got why would Wales go back to Gatlin? I actually don't understand what's wrong with rugby. It's like soccer now, football. The coach gets sacked, he goes in his circle and gets another job. He gets sacked, he goes to another job. I'll tell a very interesting story. You obviously heard of a guy called Craig Johnson, football player for Liverpool.
Yeah.
Okay, he lives down at Newcastle. That's where he's from. At 14, he went overseas to get to play football. Anyway, so in 1984 Grand Slam, we were in London, and Alan Jones took the team off to watch a football game, and there's Liverpool, Rush, Barnes, Johnson, and so I heard the name then. Anyway, so we became good mates. Anyway, he was telling this interesting story. It's basically saying about sport. what you got to do in sport, follow the money. Follow where the money finishes up, and there's your problem, you know? And he was saying that one of his coach friends was got a job in Portugal. Anyway, so this coach, I don't know who he was, ended up in Portugal, and he started to talk, and he said, well, I'm sorry, I don't speak Portuguese. So the physio said, well, mate, I speak a bit of English. I don't know if you've heard this story. Anyway, so off he went. So the whole year, the physio interpreted this, what the coach would say, but the physio's never played soccer in his life. So what happened at the end of the year, he wins a championship, then he goes to Barcelona. So now this team in Portugal for the coach. And the physio said, well, I can coach. Do you know who that guy was? Do you know who he was?
No, go on.
Mourinho.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever played a game of football in his life. And there he is now. He's one of the best coaches in the world. And as Craig said, you watch what he does at the ground. He shouts like this. And the managers, the bosses say, oh, geez, he's very passionate, isn't he? But that's what they do. They just show that they know what they're doing. So it's quite interesting. Anyone can coach anyone now. You can go and coach if you like. Just turn up and say, well, I know what I'm doing. But that's what I'm saying. So how can that happen in the world?
Fake it until you make it.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, but that's where I think, you know, I think England had a massive problem when Eddie left. Borthwick was the coach, isn't he? If you go back to when Martin Johnson was coach, Borthwick, sorry, when Martin Johnson was coach, he left. Who got the job? Robinson. How long did Robinson last? Because he wasn't the head coach. Some people are head coaches, some aren't.
Mm.
So that's the problem. You know, you think of coaches are, you know, what are you looking for in a coach? I mean, you've got a lot of experienced players there. Toji's a good player, but he's lazy. He's lazy. He thinks he's a superstar now. These guys haven't got that killer instinct which they used to have, because now they've been around a long time. So how are you going to get their enthusiasm back? You know, because now they're elder statesmen. You've got to treat them a bit better because they're elder. Mate, that's the problem with coaching. In coaching, you've got so many different personalities. You've got to know how to handle all of them, and that's a massive thing. And that's where I think the French is doing well, because was a player, he's been through, and now he's coaching the team that he's got. He's given them the skills to play a style of rugby.
You've mentioned a few times combinations. You mentioned as well players that are followed by players. You know, Tim Horan was following you, for example, on the New Zealand front, and Will Jordan. Is there any combination in that Australia squad, that backline you just mentioned, Mark Nawaqanituasi? Is he maybe a player that Australia should be seeking to follow because he makes things happen if he's deployed in the right way?
Well, the problem is he's stuck on the wing. I'd put him at 13. So if you put him at 13, now you're going to create havoc, because if you have a look at the way he runs, he does run on certain angles. See, the whole back line, most of them run straights or try and run around the outside. So it's so easy to defend. But when you're running different angles, if you look at the last couple of games, they struggle to tackle him. But what he's got to do is, and this is the biggest problem with rugby, is now when a guy runs, he puts the ball under the arm. So he's demonstrated he ain't going to pass the ball. If you have a look at that try 91 I scored running sideways, I had the ball there and I put the ball in two hands. So they wasn't sure, was I going to pass it or kick it? As soon as you shove the ball under the arm, you're demonstrating you're not going to pass it. So that's how I look at, you know, as I said, like as a player, that's when I marked Rory. I knew Rory was a very good in and outs. He couldn't chip, he couldn't pass. So I knew he couldn't step. So I knew I had to try and get in probably a bit more on one-on-one. If I gave him too much room, he ran around them. But these guys these days, they just put the ball under the arm and they just try and score themselves. But that's just a bit of experience. And that's what we know that we're not allowed to coach. We're not allowed to be involved because, I don't know, just probably too much knowledge.
Would that excite you if they put him at 13? Is that the only thing in that Australia backline, only information you could see that would excite you should they do it?
Yeah, well, I think the number... So our problem is we haven't got a number 8 that can pass. Valentino's a good player, but he can't pass the ball. Now, if you look at, you know, the way that, again, I look at games, okay, years ago you had Smith for New Zealand, Kieran Reid, Dan Carter. If as op your position, you say, mate, you've got to watch 9, 8, and 10. You've got no idea what's going to happen. Okay, you look at Australia now. You got Tate McDermott. I think is a very good player. You've got Valentine. You say, well, he can't pass. Don't worry about him. He can just run. And we'll just say number 10. That's how I would look at defence. So don't worry about number 8 because you can't pass a ball. So that's where you put the focus, the pressure on. Tate McDermott's a good player, but the problem is they don't like because he can't kick. He's not a kicker. He's a runner. So maybe 20 minutes to go in the game, he's probably best. But, again, the wingers got to have – when I played, I said with Nick Farr-Jones or my halfback, I always told him, even with Michael Lyon, I said, mate, I'm just here if you need me. Just look for me. I'll call. The more you talk, communicate, the game is easy. These guys don't talk, I mean, it's just interesting watching and training. Watch these guys. They don't talk to each other. They're just like robots. They just run into positions, and that's where the game has changed. It's all about they're just told what to do and they do it.
Campo, you sound like you've got a lot of coaching passion in you. If Steve Borthwick picked up the phone and said, probably not now, but maybe after the World Cup, said, come up and work with my backs for the next 2 years, would you up sticks and come up?
Oh, love to. No, definitely. I mean, I'll tell you, 1999 World Cup, I was at Twickenham watching England versus Fiji. I don't know if you guys, it was a really freezing day and Fiji lost because I couldn't catch the bloody ball. It was too cold. So I was in the IRB box, or English rugby, and I had Bill Beaumont and Frank Cotton. And I said to the guys, listen, I would love to be involved and coach your backs if you want to. Didn't even think about it. Mate, I'd love to. I would love. You ask Brian Ashton, who I've done some coaching with out here.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the knowledge I've got, and people think you're going to run the ball from the dressing room. I said, mate, I wouldn't do that. All you've got to do is give the players the skills to play a certain style of rugby. Then they've got to try and find the way. If they make a mistake, mate, great. Then you learn. You've got to make mistakes in life to get better. No one's a superstar. You can't just play well every game. And I keep on saying,
sorry, David. Do you think that the game at some point, the sort of arc is long, but in the end it will come back to your way of thinking? And you mentioned Brian Ashton, who during his time with England had some success. He had some heavy falls. Got to a World Cup final and all that kind of thing. The last game he coached England in before getting the unceremonious shove, which actually, as you all know, is one of the worst things I've ever seen in rugby. The way that was done. They swept 30-odd points on Ireland, but he was asking players to do things or to develop a mental approach, which there was quite a bit of resistance from some of them because they wanted the diagram on the board. They wanted process. They wanted to know what was expected of them in this area of the field at this point. And if somebody said to them, play what's in front of you, lads, I can't play the game for you, they didn't like it very much. And that seems to be the general thrust of what you're saying. And that's what's wrong with things at the moment.
Well, did you watch the World Championship under 20s?
Yeah.
Recently. Did you see the size of that French guy?
Well,
I'm just saying, did you see the size of him?
He was huge, yeah.
Okay. Did you see anyone try and tackle his legs?
No, they don't. They go high, don't they?
Well, exactly. Why would you go high to someone like you need someone low to chop him down? And after about 5 tackles, he's hitting the deck. So I'm not going to do that again. But they don't. They all want to go high.
But with that French team, David, the thing that really leapt out at me wasn't the giant guy that everyone was talking about. The thing that was the rugby smarts that the scrum half had, that the 10 had, that the inside centre who was 2 stone dripping wet had, that the flankers played with in space and with all the facilities of the old style flankers that you were talking about earlier. That was what really struck me, that they in skill levels and adventure, they had taken the game on.
Well, I don't know if you can try and go on YouTube and try and find out. Try and watch a game called the Fijian Women's Drua team versus New South Wales last year and Queensland this year. So what happened was they've got this women competition. So last year the Drua Fijian team won the whole thing. Okay, but what they did was they played, got tackled, offloaded in tackles. So what happened? The defence could not relate. They just kept on going backwards. So they won last year. Okay, so this year they won again. But then I found out there were 14 new players this year that didn't play last year in the same team, and they won easy because they're offloading. So I went to the Queensland guys. I said, guys, this is the second year in a row they've done that. Don't you think we should try and learn? So they set the standard, but no one, oh, no, we're going to do what we're going to do. And I've gone, guys, that's the trend. The only way to upset a line in defence is to offload where they can't adjust. So they've got to keep on going backwards and backwards and backwards. But these players aren't skilled enough because they never practiced, number one, to try and do that. They've been taught the same things all the time. It's like watching a barbarian game these days. It's a load of rubbish. They just play so structured. It's all the same what they do normally. Why would you want to run into people? Play the game. But again, you're going to have to get the people to understand this is how I coach. This is what we're going to do. Because older guys like me, we know a certain style, but you get a 21-year-old, he's got no idea how we played. All he's known is structure, structure, structure. I want the pods here. I want the two flankers here. So my son last year played for the trial, the under-15 Reds. And I was at the end of the oval in my car. He was at the other end, got the ball, dummy switch 12, give the 13, loop 13, go to the fullback, scored the other end. Pretty simple. So on the way home, he's gone, Dad, did you see the 3-on-3 drill we did? I said, no. So it was a 3-on-3 drill. So he got the ball, ran, passed, about to loop a second guy, and the coach got, what are you doing? I'm looping. I don't want you to do that. But in the game, he did. And the thing is, so the coach didn't explain why. So what happens now, all these coaches are educators. So as you a coach, you wouldn't go, you can't coach what you want to coach because they'll say, well, what are you doing? I said, well, no, we don't do that anymore. We've got a pod system here. We've got a pod system. So my son went to training. Okay. Played number 10. Not one coach spoke to him. Not one coach. So during the training session, they had their pods. So I was on the sideline and the ball came out to the wing. Wasn't the winger. The guy took the ball up and only one pod was there. So the winger went in to block the ball. Coach, what are you doing in there? I don't want you in there, mate. Get out. You guys, mate, you should be here in every part of the game. You three stick together. Instead of saying, coach, to the winger, mate, I love the initiative, but I'd really want you out to score tries. I don't want you in there. But he said, I don't want you to get out. And I'm sitting there going, but that's all they coach. They can't coach. They just do what they're told to do. And you sit there and go, what kids don't even know how to do a loop. They don't even know how to do a switch. They do nothing because they don't see it. All they do is just see guys running, blocking, ball behind. I remember in our day, in 84 Grand Slam, we played against Cardiff. It's the old Cardiff, the number 2. We used to have a move. Mark Ellie got the ball, pass the ball to Michael Liner. Michael Liner would pass the ball behind number 12. We got penalised for obstruction. The ball went behind someone's back. Now you've got 5 players, and that's not obstruction. Wow. So that's the problem. The problem is they're changing the laws, but it's not making our game better.
No.
That's why the French need to win the World Cup, because if they win the World Cup, every other country's going to say, shit, this is the way we've got to play now. If they don't, we're going to play the same, the same stuff. We don't want that. We need to entertain if you want to be in the world stage, especially in Australia where we've got we've got 4 football codes. So unless we do well, we're going to struggle.
David, I'm just wondering about time. How are you doing?
Mate, it's 7:30 at night, mate. I've got all night if you want. and I've got about, this is my bar, so I've got a bottle. I've got a couple of bottles here, mate. So just go for it.
Listen, Campo, it's great to see you, mate. I've actually got to I've got a meeting that I've got to go to. So
thanks. Don't worry about me, mate. I'm in the Australia at night time. You just go and have a great day, okay?
Very much, mate.
Hey, Campo, that's another dumb forward you've seen off, David.
I'll try and have a great day, mate. Okay.
Okay, you too. Nice to meet you. All the best. See you, mate.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers, mate. Bye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Campo, are we good to do your quick fire questions section very quickly?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
Let's get straight
I
in.
haven't looked at the questions, but I'll just answer it now.
We can do it. Perfect. Nickname.
Okay. Nickname. Wonder Boy or Blunder Boy. Or Campo. They call me Campo. My son's called Campo as well. I got no idea why he's got my nickname, but unfortunately, when you get old, you lose certain things. So yeah.
Best rugby memory.
Best rugby memory would be just representing Australia.
Nice. Well, that's really nice. Most embarrassing rugby memory.
Most embarrassing
Rugby memory.
Most embarrassing rugby memory would be I don't think it's embarrassing. Look, I don't think I was ever embarrassed, mate. No.
High tackle at Twickenham.
That wasn't a high tackle. I knocked the ball down. How is that embarrassing? You still didn't win, so it doesn't matter. See what I'm going to put up with. You ask me a question, and I get abused for it.
Pre-game tune.
Sorry?
What's pre-game tune? What song would you listen to before a game?
Tune? Mate, I never listen to music. What the routine was, first in the dressing room, first to get strapped, first to get massaged, and last to run out. That was it.
Is that because the massage lasted so long, David?
Dear. Okay.
Post-game meal.
Post-game meal? Depends. If it was club rugby, it was chili chips. For some reason, I craved chips because I know they're supposed to be quick, but when I was going through the system, club train at Rand, we used to have twisties, which is a sweet before training, after games. But I got onto a thing called buckwheat, and there was miso, this guy. And after games, mate, I was so high that I used to have chili chips for some reason. I got no idea. So that was when I was just playing club rugby.
Yeah. Best player you've played against?
This is a difficult one because I played 15 years. So I tell you, one of the guys who I thought was unbelievable was a guy called Jean-Baptiste Lafont. He was, and so is Blanco. They were great players.
Best player you've played with?
Look, it's again probably Mark Ella, miles ahead of everybody.
Favorite player right now?
Right now, I would go for Dupont, or I would go for Colby.
Favorite stadium?
The favourite stadium for me is the Sydney Cricket Grounds. And you've got to understand, in Australia, I come from a public school background. My dad was Italian, never played sport. And in the 60s, when I was born, guys, 60s, 70s and 80s, the Sydney Cricket Ground, where all the rugby league games were played, all the crickets, everything was played there. So when I got to play for Australia, we played in the same dressing room as Don Bradman played.
Yeah.
So the dressing rooms are still the same. So walking into that as a kid, watching these superstars, mate, it was just like a fairy tale come true.
Favorite gym exercise?
Gym exercise. Well, my wife I met in South Africa, and I was doing a hip exercise, so I'd have to say hip exercise because then we end up getting married. So there we are.
Occupation if rugby didn't exist.
If rugby didn't exist, oh mate, I'd be probably still in the sawmill in Queanbeyan, I think.
Superstitions. You mentioned the strapping first.
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot of superstitions. There was wash the car on a Saturday.
What, before a match?
Wow.
Well, this is not a test match, but normal.
Oh.
Test matches are different.
Yeah.
Yeah, just I just do the same routine. So get to the game, last to run on. I made sure after games I stay in the paddock and just sign autographs, and that's before and after. I went to Italy in 1984. And anyway, so I think it was about 87, 88, I went to Berlusconi in Milan, and Mark Ella was the coach. And I used to just have fruits for the game, and all the Italians would be eating everything. And then I used to strap my arms and my ankles. Anyway, so one day I didn't play, and I went to dress and help, and Mark Ella said, listen, if I ever see you strap one more bit of your body, I'll kill you. I said, why? Have a look, and there's the Italians. All of them are strapping. And then they would eat what I was eating before games because it worked for me. They go, this is it. Mate, it was bloody hilarious. And I just said, okay, I won't. But that's how they work, because it was working for me. They all thought, this is what we got to do, you know. So I would eat just yogurt and fruit and honey before a game, and it didn't really work for those guys. but that's how it worked, yeah.
Two more. Rugby law you would change?
There'd be a couple of things I'd change. I would change that no advantage. If you get the advantage in the 22 or half, you've got 3 phases to use it or lose it. And the other law I would change, get rid of the goal line dropout, and get rid of the 50-20 law. Go back to what rugby was about. And I'll tell you one thing I would really do for the forwards: no lifting in lineouts. If you're a good jumper, you're a good jumper. You don't have to be lifted. Mate, you can lift a dwarf up and catch it, and he's a good jumper. That's not what rugby's about. Rugby's about skill.
Yeah.
Should be skill.
Best thing about working in rugby?
We've worked in rugby, meeting people. My knowledge and friendships around the world, what rugby is. I mean, I'm from a small town of 21,000 people. My dad's Italian, never played sport in his life, never finished school, and I got to travel. I think I went to 47 countries in the world, and people don't understand what a great sport. So all my friends in Italy, and wherever I go in Europe, I see mates, and that's what rugby's about. It's a very unique sport.
That's 15 questions done. I just want to follow up on one of your superstitions, which is running out last, because we've had a few players say that, and I've always wanted to ask, but never have. What happens if there's two of you in the team that has the superstition? Because surely it's happened, that has the superstition where they want to run out last. What do you do?
Well, if you've been around as 15 years as long as me, you've got to say.
It's a little higher.
Bad luck. Oh, no, it's just one of those things. It just happened. I don't know. And that's why I wore number 11. I thought it looked good, even though I should be wearing 14. I said, stuff that. I said, I'll just wear. That's why they got the shits with me, because I was on the wrong wing with the wrong number. And I just said, I just liked 11. It just looked good. And my number plate of my car was number 11 as well. So it suited.
If you'd been in the same dressing room as Eddie Jones and he wanted us to run out last as well, you could have run out together and you could have pretended he was the mascot.
Was that supposed to be funny, was it?
No.
No, true.
No, as it turns out, it wasn't.
No, exactly. No, Eddie Ford's run out. All the Fords run out early, mate. Nobody wanted to run out last. That was just part of the thing. I always used to. It was interesting when I got dropped in '95. I got dropped by the only person ever dropped was Bob Dwyer, and so in '95 I got dropped, and it's after the World Cup, and I was playing club rugby on the Saturday where the All Blacks were playing Australia and New Zealand. Jonah Lomu destroyed the Wallabies. Anyway, so Matt Burke's fullback got injured. And anyway, that was on the Saturday. Sunday, the papers were saying this way, Campese would be called back up into the team. Anyway, so Monday night comes and they picked a guy called Rod Kafer, and no one knew who Rod Kafer was. Anyway, so Tuesday night happens and Mark Ellis at training. He's going, mate, Rod Kafer's just broken his leg. And I said, that's a real shame, isn't it? And anyway, so next morning, Rod McQueen was the selector. And Rod rings me and says, mate, we thought about it and we think you're the best man for the job. Like I'm 35 years old. I said, okay, go training, shut up and say nothing. So I said, okay, so off I go training. And I was sponsored by BMW and my number plate was N011 and Ford sponsored Rugby Australia. So I've rocked up in the BM right in front of all the journos. And the manager had the shits with me. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm just parking my car." So I walked out to the Oval, and Bob Dwyer's there. He said, "Mate, welcome back." I said, "Yeah, thanks." So off I went and trained. And what happened was, if Matt Berg was fit, I was out of the team. Anyway, Daniel Herbert pulls a hammy. Now I'm in the team. So I've never been on the bench in my life. And I said, "Guys, what do you actually do on the bench?" Because I'm normally playing. "Oh, we sit there and we have these snakes and all that." So anyway, so on Saturday in the game, anyway, so Jason Little, I always used to sit on front of the bus. From 19 years old to 36, I always sat on the front of the bus. So Jason took my job when I was out, and then he said, "Oh, mate, you can sit in the front of the bus." And I said, "Thanks, that's kind of you." So we get to the game, and on the bench, and Jonah Lomas destroyed the Wallabies. I get Damien Smith scores a really good try before halftime, gets injured. I've gone to the dressing room, come out, and Bob Dwyer says, "Don't give him any room." So I'm thinking, you talked about Jonah. I said, "Mate, if 15 guys can't stop him, how am I going to stop him?" So I run out, number 16, kick off, Jonah runs at me, I tackle him. Absolutely in shock. The whole crowd's in shock because I've never tackled in my life. And Sean Fitzpatrick's looking at me and laughing and said, "What the F are you doing?" I said, looked at him. I said, "Mate, I've got no idea what I'm doing." And it was a great moment. And then there's a scrum packing, and Sean and I, we're having a laugh. So after the game, I went to the All Black dressing room. I swapped jerseys with Jonah. Anyway, I went back to the Wallabies. Bob Dwyer absolutely ripped into me big time. And I'm sitting there going, "Mate, that's who I am. That's part of the game." And so that was it was just a moment, but I mean, it's just part of a story. So it's just superstitions, front the bus all my life, run out. And when even Jason said, "Oh, mate, you can have the front seat back." But it just worked for me, and that's what I enjoy doing.
Definitely worked. Chris, what do you think's worse, your success rate with jokes for our special guests, or Australia's goal kickers' success rates?
Neither have registered on the scoreboard.
No.
So it is what it is. David used to. He won't remember all the interviews he's given to the English press. I was in on them. I was in on a couple of them down the years. He gave a particularly inflammatory one in '95 before the Wallabies were beaten in the quarterfinal. But it was quite good. It was great fun actually down the years talking to David and the Aussies generally. Actually, in fairness, because a lot of the English press guys, I think Brendan will agree with this. We thought that the Australians, in terms of press relations and a willingness to talk and a willingness to actually say something during interviews rather than just do a Jeff boycott and block the Tom Tit out of everything. They were
brilliant. The Aussies were always good copy, welcomed you. No, they were fantastic. On that, I just remembered another one from you, Campo. 2003, about a week after the World Cup. For some reason, why were you tasked with walking down Oxford Street with the board saying, "Sorry, I was wrong," or something like that, wasn't it? I was there. I can't remember why we made you do it.
What I think it was with Gabby Logan was the the Sky commentator or something, and I did some commentary with them, and I think it was in Brisbane, and England. I think England were playing Wales, and someone said, "Oh, look, Gabby said, oh, look, there's been a poll in England from Ladbrokes and said, what would you most like to see?" And they said, if England wins the World Cup, they want to see David Campese walk down Oxford Street with a sandwich board. And I actually thought it was Oxford Street in Sydney, which is gay. I'm saying, okay, I'll do that. Fine. Anyway, so when you won, so I said, righto, so went over there. They paid me a lot of money, so it was fine. I don't mind.
And then, if I recall, you gave England the World Cup at the BBC Sports Award.
Oh, mate,
how
bad was that? How bad was that? Because in '91, I was in Italy, and I don't know if you remember this, but I was in Italy, and they rang me up and said, "Oh, mate, can you come and present England the Team of the Year award? The Cape runners up in the World Cup." And I've gone, okay. So I've rocked up with jeans, just a white singlet and a jacket. And then I've got on, you should have seen the looks from the England players. Absolutely horrified. I've got, yeah, great, anyway, so in 2003, when you won, they rang me up, and even Clive were really pissed off that I was the one who presented them with the team of the year. You English are very strange how you actually present your teams with awards.
Well, at least you have more of a smile on your face doing that than John Howard did on the night of the final.
Well, I mean, the thing is, the best team won the World Cup. I mean, you've got to appreciate that.
Your Prime Minister threw the cup and the medals at England players. No,
but I think there was something, you've got to understand, I think there was something that he had, because they went at extra time, there was something that happened that he had to do. I don't know, but that's what we heard, that there was time restrictions and he had to get out. Something happened. It wasn't about his attitude. Well, I think so. I mean, that's what we were told, because John Howard loves rugby. He's a really nice guy. And unfortunately, okay, we'll talk about 2019 England players not even putting their fucking medals on. How bad was that?
That was
terrible.
Honestly, that was disgusting. And the World Rugby did nothing about it. I mean, they've just disrespected Japan, and they didn't put it on. I've gone, mate, really? It's a World Cup.
I completely agree with that.
That's what I mean. That's why everyone doesn't like England, because they do stupid things like that.
Yeah.
It's very sad, I was there. The Japanese were great hosts, and then you see something, you sit there going, mate, really?
Yeah, needless.
So don't have a go at John Howard, please.
Oh, okay. Well, now we're beginning to understand your politics as well, David, so that's good.
Well, we're square now. It's 1-on-1. Yeah, okay.
Campo, I've got another one for you.
Yeah.
Why did you take a year off and play golf when you were a teenager? Were you going to become the next, I don't know, Masters champion or something? And what happened to the golf?
What's that? Yeah, well, like I said, I lived 100 metres from a golf course in Queanbeyan, and country towns. As I said, my dad never played sport. I had a brother, 2 younger sisters, and I played rugby league from 8 to 16. So we played on Sunday, so my parents never came to watch. So there was never any pressure. So I played Aussie rules for a couple of years. I won a golf championship at 15, and I did all these sports, and there was never any pressure at all. So I just went and played. So rugby league was 16. We lost the premiership. They blamed me for it. And they went to the party, they were drinking. I wasn't a drinker, and I said, I can't handle this. So next year I went to watch rugby. So in 79, I went to watch 4th grade before the season and watched them go. And I said to the coach, I said, mate, you need a fullback. So I started that week after, absolutely clueless about this game. And they put me at fullback. I played 4th grade before the old 38-year-old guys, and the ball would go over their head, and they'd look up, and this young guy at the back would run the ball back. They had a great time. They didn't have to run anywhere because I'd bring the ball to them. We won the premiership that year, played first grade next year, then played for the Australian 21s and played for the Wallabies in 4 years. Off I went. I was clueless. Had no idea. Off I went.
That's the secret.
I was the hardest trainer. Well, no one saw it. Well, again, there was never any pressure from my parents. Now, I don't know if you see parents, they take their kids' bags to the game and they're there, and I'm going, oh, mate, really, I couldn't handle that. That's what I tell my kids. So my daughter, Sienna, who's 18, she's just made the Australian country team, Australian team. 18, she's a great sports lady. All our kids play, and I said, just go and play whatever sport you want, and then one day you decide. There's never any pressure. And that's I have to thank my parents for that, because my dad he just had his grapes, his vegetable garden, he had his chooks, and he had his rabbits, and that's what he loved doing. So, that's what I put my successes down, because there was never any pressure to play anything. I could play what I wanted to do, and then one day I was lucky to go and play rugby, and off I went.
Way to go!
It went a long way. So then I lived in Italy for 10 years. I lived in South Africa, coached the Natal Sharks, married my wife Lara, who's from Zimbabwe, lived around the world, and I think that's what rugby's about. That's what the real rugby's all about. It's not about professional. It's about playing the game that you love playing, and you can express yourself, But you've got to have the skills to do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's do 10 more minutes, if that's okay.
That's fine.
I don't want to.
I've got a half a bottle left, so I can probably draw 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes.
Okay.
Talk about England, so
Yep.
you need to pour half the bottle. Look, we've had a lot to digest this episode. Got 1,000 things noted down. The biggest one on the list, and we'll start with that and just see how we go, is obviously Owen Farrell. David, I'll have your input on him first of all, and what you make potentially missing, not just the Argentina game, but potentially the entire round robin stage of the World Cup for England.
He should be barred for life. Because the thing that really disappointed me was in 2018 in England when he did that tackle against the South African guy, high tackle, I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
And Angus Campbell, the Australian referee, made the worst decision. If he actually sent him off, the World Cup 2019 would have been great. Because he didn't send him off, remember in the World Cup 2009, every high tackle, you got red carded, everybody, because of that decision. And then the week after that, he played Australia, Owen Farrell, and he shoulder charged the big lock who went for the line. I don't know if you remember that as well. And he's a rugby league player. He's been doing it all his life. So I find it very interesting that he's allowed to do that. So, look, I just think that's very sad. And he hasn't learned. And why make him captain, really? He's not a captain's backside. He's a rugby league player. Why do we always get these rugby league players and give them the honour of doing things? How many rugby union players captain their rugby league teams? Nobody. Because they don't look at our sport as, but we encourage these guys. Yes, he's been around. I mean, you've got some really, Smith's a good player. But the problem is you haven't got a number 12 who's going to run off Smith. That's the problem, So, look, again, you English have got some really good players, but you don't pick the best possible team.
Brendan, what do you make?
That's my thought.
Banned for life?
What's that, sorry?
A bit excessive, that one, but...
Why? But why? Look what he's done to the game. What has he done to the game?
I'll take a slightly more sympathetic view overall, but it was another bad challenge. He should get the maximum ban, whatever that is. It probably ought to start at 12 weeks, not 6 weeks. And he probably, missing the tournament would be an option. What he will get is probably 4 weeks. And
but why? Why? Because he's English?
No, because they don't just fudge the English. Johnny Sexton got away quite lightly with his sort of verbal assault on the refs at the European Cup final. It's all massaged so he's available.
But can I say something? He's been doing that for years, though. He's been mouthing off for years as well.
Well, again, he's been doing that, and Owen Farrell's
the
been
referee.
away with bad
the referee
tackles
should have said,
years.
"Mate, you're off. Just send him off."
Yeah.
He did that when he came out to Australia. I was watching him in Australia here. He was mouthing at the referees every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with a lot of Australian players.
He came down from the stands to give the referees his.
Yeah, but even Nick White. I mean, a lot of the Australian players. I've watched them in Scotland. It's like watching football. They just mouth off at the ref. Mate, can you imagine nowadays with big Clive Norling, with his
Norlo would have you
little white
shorts.
Yeah, exactly. But these guys, they accept that. I said, "No, listen, you talk to me like that, mate. You're off." I said, just go. So, but that's the thing is They want you to do things, but by the law, they just, they have circumstances. I mean, Owen Farrell's got a bad record. If they did it the first time, the World Cup 2009 wouldn't have been a debacle with all the high tackles. And what the World Cup, you go back and have a look how many guys got red carded for high tackles. And the amount of missed tackles you can see in the game. It's just diabolical. I mean, if they want to be fair, any high tackle, mate, you're off. Go.
I think he will cop a big ban this evening. I think it is a disciplinary. He won't get the life ban, Campo, but he will get a big and significant ban that will absolutely fundamentally affect England's World Cup. I mean, if he's out for 6 weeks, that's it. He'll miss all the pool matches. Do we even pick him?
Do you remember 2015 Rugby World Cup? Australia versus England.
Just trying to remember that one. 14, something like that, was it? England one?
No. Can you remember what happened? Who got red carded? Who got sent off in a high tackle?
Oh, and we're talking about 2015 now, sorry.
2015.
Right, hang on. There was a David Pocock, was there?
No. It was 2 England players.
There was a strange thing at the end, wasn't there, David? Sam Burgess got away with one.
Yep, and Farrell but they both did exactly the same tackle.
And Farrell,
and they should have been both off. They should have been both off, but the referee didn't. So it's just, if you want to be, look, that's what's wrong with rugby. If you want to be fair, be fair. That's the laws. You can't tackle above the shoulder. That's the thing, above the nipples, but they do. And yet he does it. Farrell does it. He got caught a couple of years ago as well. I mean, they're shocking. But that's what rugby league play. That's what rugby league players do, and he's a rugby league player.
And what rugby league coaches coach still?
Yeah.
Rugby league coaches in union.
This is all cause and effect, isn't it? This whole thing. It is. I mean, Owen Farrell is in a sense the product of what rugby union has become.
Yep.
In his approach to tackling and what have you, but he is also one of the people who is forcing rugby down that road. So it's a great mishmash of cause and effect. I mean, I'm frustrated with Owen Farrell, really frustrated, because he simply hasn't learned.
But he's not going to change. He doesn't want to be a rugby player. He's a league player playing rugby.
It does.
And I can remember. I think last year, the year before, the Six Nations, there was a photo of Twickenham, England playing Scotland, and there was a ruck on the halfway line, and England had 4 players versus Scotland 2. And what you do, he kicks for the fucking corner.
Yeah.
And you sit there and you go, mate, you've got 4 players. Just give them the ball. Let them have a go. But no, because that's what he was told. That's his. You know, I'm sick of rugby league players coming to rugby. I'm really sad that we've got to go and pay players who don't want to play our game. Villawatu, who's going on the World Cup now, Eddie Jones said 3 weeks ago he's going to be the best rugby winger in the world. The poor guy's never been taught how to play rugby.
Well,
but that's okay, because Eddie Jones knows the best of every player in the world. Mate, if I got hold of him, I could teach him things that no one could teach him, because that's what my position was. But we're not allowed to. We're not allowed to pass knowledge on.
And there is a personality thing here. You take Jason Robinson, comes from, he was a pure rugby league player. He taught himself to become a textbook rugby union tackler. By the time he was mid-rugby union career, there was no lower, fairer, more textbook tackler than Jason Robinson. But he came from the same environment, rugby league culture, as Owen Farrell and the other league type.
But can I? Okay, I'm going to go back to 2003 quickly, the Rugby World Cup final. What happened in the first 10 minutes in the Australian-England game?
Well, Lottie Takiri got that try, didn't he, when they put it up high over Jason?
Okay. So Lottie Takiri, 6'4", Jason Robinson, 5'11". Yep. How many other times did we do the kick in the air to Jason Robinson?
Yeah, what happened there?
Mate, I would have just gone, mate, we're just out here all day. We would have scored by 100. But that's what I mean. That's how dumb it is. You've got someone up here, down here. What do? Just kick in the air. Well, that's what I don't understand. I don't understand. And who was the coach?
Eddie.
For Australia? Eddie Jones.
Eddie Jones was the Aussie coach, yeah.
So Eddie Jones did that 20 years ago. He got rugby league players. So what's he done when he's come back? He's got more rugby league players. Mate, we've got talent. We've got talent.
It's still true, though, David, isn't it? That in terms of rugby league players to come in the union, the further you are away from the forwards, the better chance you've got of making the cut. You know, wings and fullbacks coming out of league, they've had a measure of success. Anyone inside of that, you might make out a case for Sonny Bill Williams, let's say, but he was never first, or very rarely first choice for the All Blacks. When Coleman, Smith and Nonu were fit, they were the centres, and Sonny Bill was on the bench. But leaving him aside, there aren't many non-back 3 players who have come out of league and made a real success of it.
There's nobody.
Apart from Sam Burgess, I forgot him because he.
Sam Burgess. But again, if you got Sam Burgess, if someone tried to teach him how to play, I mean, he's huge. God, I stood there. I met him, mate. He's twice the size of me. I'm a midget. So somebody had to just give him the skill and say, mate, this is what I want. Just go and try this. But that's the problem. They bring these rugby league players over, and you've got to fit into what we do.
Yeah.
And the guys never played. You know, England again last year, England versus Australia to Sydney Cricket Ground. They bring that Vanuatu on, 5 minutes to go on our try line. I said, mate, what's his superstar? Is he Superman? What's he supposed to do? Run the length to score? I said, really? 5 minutes to go in the test. Why would you bring a guy 5 minutes to go? That's what I don't understand. I just don't understand these.
David, in 2014, 2015, England made Sam Burgess the highest paid union player in the country when he had never played a single game of union. And they brought him in to do precisely the things that we're now all moaning about.
Yep.
Rugby league
Exactly.
style, rugby, get over the game line.
Who was the coach?
Get over the
Who was
game
the
line
coach?
and smash seven bells out of
But who-
people with rugby
Who
league.
was the coach? Who was the coach?
Stuart Lancaster.
Great coach he's been, hasn't he?
Well, you know, Leinster have been quite. He's been at Leinster for a while. We'll see where
Find
Stuart
out.
got to with his coaching, because he's going to Racing now in Paris. So
I know,
and he's-
but this is what I talked about before with football. Coaches get in this circle, they get sacked or leave, they just keep on going to another job. They keep on going and they do exactly the same.
I don't think we ever got really to the truth of the Burgess thing, how big a say Andy Farrell had in bringing him across. Stuart always took that. Stuart was the head coach, and in fairness to Stuart, he was a really good bloke. He took that. He said, "I was the head coach. I was the man who did it." So that's fine. And actually, a whole load of people will still sit there and argue that Sam Burgess was a success, that we should have made.
But also, but if you have a look at a guy called Michael Jordan, best basketballer in the world, then he goes and plays baseball. Now, if he couldn't really make it, doesn't it demonstrate to you if he's one of the best athletes in the world? I kept on saying, what a great athlete. If he struggles, someone who's not anywhere near that's going to struggle. You know?
Yeah, sure.
But we don't, because it's a name. Even Eddie, we've got this young guy out here who's 19, went to a rugby school, but now we spent $1.6 million on him. He's not available for 2 years.
Yeah.
Because we just want to upset rugby league. We want to upset rugby. What is that? What rugby league got to do with the price? We've got a school system. We've got players. But the problem is we're just totally lost our way. We've got to, you know, why do boards never get in trouble for what they've done in the past, the amount of money they've spent? Why aren't they accountable? They move on and go, thanks, mate, great service, you know. Bill Beaumont's been here 20, 40 years. But what have you done in 40 years? What have they done to make the game better? They haven't.
You'll be interested to know, David, that in the rugby paper, certainly in my corner of it, World Rugby is known as the non-governing governing body. And that's what they are. I mean, I honestly don't know what they're for. I don't know what they're for.
Yeah.
Just one more question on the Owen Farrell thing, and then I think we will today. Yep. David, do you feel then, from what you've said about Farrell, that his ban is actually a blessing in disguise in some ways? I don't know if you watched England-Wales, but the general feeling, and I'm sure Chris will agree with me here, George Ford effectively in the game, and he looked very, very good when he came on.
Look, I think the biggest problem you guys had was Ford's old man was coach as well, wasn't he?
Mike.
There was a time then he was on the
Yeah, exactly. So there was always
a defence coach.
There was always that was always a problem when you had the father's coach. I mean, it's like watching a kid now who comes through the grades and the dad's the coach. The dad pushes to come through because he's the coach of the thing. It's like Ford, and now you've got Farrell as well. His old man was coaching. That's how I look at things. I'm not an ordinary person. That's how I don't want to coach my son or my daughter, because I think it's not fair. I think if I was going to coach rugby, I'd either coach a year below my son or a year above, because it's very unfair coaching, and that's why I look at it. I think Farrell, he did a tackle a couple of years ago as well, which was really bad when he was playing for Saracens, as what was a shocker. He's got a history of it, but he's allowed to keep on doing it. If they nailed him on the head straight away and said, mate, you're out for 8 weeks, go. We don't want you. Because what happens is mothers see that. And mothers are the ones who let their kids play. Now, we had the same, I don't know if you watched last year when South Africa played Australia in Adelaide, when the South African winger, and then Corabetti came along, hit him in the air and saved the try. Straight away I said, red card. He didn't use his arm, use his shoulder, because rugby league players, they use their shoulder. Anyway, the other thing is, it's quite interesting. You can't hit anybody in the air. Is that the law? Is that right? You can't hit anybody who's in the air? Is that what the law states?
Yeah, if the ball just pops up on the bounce and the bloke jumps a little bit to get on the bounce,
so
you still can't hit him.
okay, the South African guy's in the air, diving. Koroibete hits him in the air and saves a try. And everyone's going, oh, what a great tackle. Fantastic. And so even the guys in commentary, like Drew Mitchell said, oh, that was unbelievable. And I just said, I tweeted, said, mate, that's a red card. And they said, oh, come on, Campo. He said, mate, you've got to give him the effort. It's a great. I said, no. I said, mate, you don't understand. I coach kids. You tell kids never to do that. And the mothers look at that and say, you're not playing rugby. And yet on TV, you say, oh, that was a fantastic tackle. I said, mate, he didn't use his arms. So that's the problem is you've got the adults saying something, but then the kids here see that and they want to do that. So you've got Farrell. You don't realise the effect that has on some young kid who said, oh, I'm going to try that. I saw that guy do that. He plays for England. It's a great tackle. That's what they forget. The kids watch. They see what happens. They want to be like that player. But in different countries,
Obviously, there's the liability side of things, but in terms of the way England play as well, do you see more potential in that England backline, which, but ask anyone, has failed to click, well, for the last 2-3 years?
But why? Who's the backs coach for England?
I think technically it's now Richard Wigglesworth, isn't it? But I mean, we never used to be given the name of the backs coach. It was some itinerant Aussie who would come in every 2 or 3 months.
It was Paul Grace.
Okay.
No, seriously. We used to have guys we'd never heard of would arrive and they'd be termed the backs coach.
Well, you picked Eddie as coach. I did warn you, but no one listens to me because they've got no idea what I think I'm doing. Coaches are, to me, a coach is to, if you want a backs coach, you've got to give the players the skills to play a certain style. And the problem is professionalism now. Everyone does exactly the same. No one's different. And that's the sad thing about the game. I think the game's gone through. If you have a look at when rugby was at its top, it was exciting. You had players, you could do things. You encourage players to do things. Now it's just kick the crap out of the ball. And again, if you haven't got the skills, the confidence, or allow guys to help try and make mistakes, I know I'm almost finished, but for me, the British Lions 89 making that mistake when Rob Andrews missed that goal and I threw that pass and we lost. If I didn't throw that, I don't think I would have played as I did in 91, because I think that's the more mistakes you make, more you try, the better you get. If you don't try, you'll never try. And you've got to make mistakes. No one's perfect, but it's how you react to when you make a mistake. And if you think at 91, I think I played my best rugby because I was free, I made mistakes, and I just kept on trying. And that's what you're supposed to do in life. And you've got to let every kid plays keep on saying, mate, don't worry about if you make a mistake. I want you to go and find a way. Yes, you tried that, but there's another way. I want you to find it. And that's what coaches don't do. They don't let the kids make mistakes because that's how life is. No one's perfect. No one's perfect in life. You've got to make mistakes. And I think that's one thing that we've got to learn with kids. You've got to get them out there and treat them as a kid and say, mate, off you go. Play more games. If you want to be something, you want to sidestep, go for it. I don't really care. Okay, if it didn't work, okay, there's another way, find it. And that's where coaching is very important, the way we allow kids to express themselves. That's life, mate. I mean, the problem is with these days of phones and all that, and the thing is, if kids don't watch, and that's the problem, they don't watch rugby. In Australia, we struggle big time because of these other codes. But have you seen the movie The Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner?
Oh, Field of Dreams, yes. Seen that one, yeah.
Yeah. What did he say? If you build it, they will come.
Yeah.
If you play a style of rugby, people will come and watch. But if you don't, people won't come. The same fact of life. You've got to entertain people. And entertaining people is playing a style of rugby that people have never seen and they want to involve. That's how in Australia we became 91 world champions and 99. We're the first country in the world to win 2 World Cups, and now we haven't won since. Because the coaches come in after that didn't want to play the style. We are Australians. We are different to English. We are different to New Zealand. We are different to Wales. Wales' problem is, why do they keep on getting Kiwi coaches to coach the Welsh team? Gatland, do you know Gatland? I played against him in 1986. Do you know he sat on the bench for the All Blacks for 50-something tests, never got a game as hooker. Never got a game because Sean Fitzpatrick never came off. History, guys. No, but I'm just saying, that's it.
Yeah.
You've got to earn the rights to play. You've got to earn. It's not a contract because you get paid more money. To me, you've got to earn the right to be a player playing for a World Cup for Australia or England. Just because you're under contract means nothing. I think Toji's the same. Toji's a bloody good player, but he thinks he's really good now. He's got to go back to realise why he was one of the best players in the world. Forget about the politics. Forget about that. Play the game. Be a leader. Show that you want to play there. But they get older. As you get older, you think you're a bit, you're one of the leaders and all that. You don't have to work as hard. But that's not good because you're as you get older, you are a leader for the younger guys to say, mate, if I can do it, you should be able to do it. And that's why probably Skelton is the captain saying, guys, if I can do it 150 kilos, 130, you can do it. So that's what I mean. Coaches are very smart sometimes and picking players to do certain things.
How's the bottle of wine doing, David? All done?
I've got a little bit, guys. Not much, but yeah. No, I didn't drink the whole bottle.
Very, very good effort. I think we will wrap up there anyway. I'll leave you to enjoy the wine without the joys of our company and Chris Hewett's shit
That's
joke.
fine.
David, huge thank you. It's been a hell of a 2 hours. Certainly our longest episode.
2 hours? Jeez, is that all?
You're just getting going.
No, well, I mean, the thing is, that's how I just love it. I mean, the thing is, people don't say you just love the game. I just love the game. I mean, the thing is that you're so frustrated because you can see things and say, oh, if I can get hold of those guys, this is what I will teach them. And yet we're not allowed to. We're not allowed to be involved. I mean, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
It is, I mean, it's not difficult to tell guys, got to get your skills going, I mean, run the ball in two hands. Don't put the ball under the arm. Yeah. Run so you can show you're going to pass or kick. Keep the opposition guessing, because defence is rugby league defence. It's not rugby union defence.
Yeah. So
you've got to find a way to beat the defence, and you can beat the defence by running different angles, doing switches. Kids don't even know how to do a switch or a loop. They've got clueless. Never seen one in their life because no one does it.
Yeah. Before you go, let's get a quick prediction for where Australia are getting to in the World Cup.
Well, the problem is, I don't think anyone's got any idea. Probably Eddie's the only one who's got some idea. I think we got the easiest pool.
Yeah.
I really think that. I mean, Georgia, who knows? I mean, I don't know about Georgia, who they're playing. I know a lot of their players used to play in France. Physical, good scrum. But I don't know in the backs, we'd probably, again, beat them there. Fiji are a hell of a lot better. Now Fiji will probably give you 70, 75 minutes instead of 60 because they've been playing in the Super Rugby, so they're getting better. Then you've got Wales. Wales have lost a lot of senior players, so they'll be pretty raw. Again, mate, and then Portugal. So I think we'll get to the quarters. Again, up to then, who knows? I mean, as I said, if we lose our number 10, we're gone. And that's the thing is you don't realise. We'll look at France now. Intermac's gone. Before the World Cup, it's gone. So now they've got to try and scramble to find someone else. So that's the thing is in World Cups, you don't know. If you lose, if you think about 2019 World Cup, England lost their best player 5 minutes into the game. So Coles, who's a 36-year-old prop, who's been playing 20 minutes, he's got to play 60 minutes. So that destroyed their scrum. And then the South Africans bring on the whole new front row, which I think is really dangerous for the game. And I think that's one thing we've got to look at rugby is you can't bring on a whole brand new front row when you've got one guy who's 35 who's only been playing. Now they just get to that's cheating, I think. I think they've got to look at the game and say, well, that's more dangerous when you bring on a whole brand new front row with 20 to go and the other team haven't got anyone else to come on. I mean, really, is that fair? I mean, that's not fair. Some countries can do that.
I wouldn't have tactical substitutions at all, David.
No. Well, when we played, we were the best 15 in the world in Australia. Now you're the best 23.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You play. If you're good enough, you play. But now what this thing really just I don't understand. Like we just had the Bledisloe Cup, so you have the Wallabies go out 40 minutes. You know, showing the drift. 41 minutes, you're on the field. Okay, you're sub. You just spent 10 minutes in the dressing room. You got 1 minute out there, then you're sub. What does that? I mean, you take your best player, you take your captain off. You take your captain off the field with 40 to go. What the hell? Well, let them play. The combinations are working, so you get rid of them and you bring a total different combination, and you wonder why it doesn't work. I don't understand. If you're good enough to start, you're good enough to finish.
Totally.
So is that a prediction, Australia to go out in the quarters?
I don't know who will end up playing England. I mean, it could be I don't think England's that good, are they? Yeah.
A 50-50 match at best.
No, well, I'm just saying, seriously. I mean,
I can see it getting to the semis. I can see it getting to the semis.
Probably. But again, who? I mean, if you look at the big games, South Africa versus Ireland in their pool, you've got a game coming up on the 24th, which is Australia versus France. You've got the Springboks playing New Zealand going into the World Cup. And the thing is, in World Cups, you don't want an easy game. You want hard games. And unfortunately, Australia's got Portugal before they get to the quarters. So you might beat Portugal by 80 points. And then next week, the defence is going to be, you won't be able to do what you did against Portugal. I'd rather a very hard game instead of a very easy game. So that could work against us. And again, in those games, if you get an injury, that's the problem. If you lose a star player who, we haven't got combinations, you can't just sort of, and Eddie, he'll play different plays in different positions. You need combinations and a good goal kicker. That could be our downfall.
I'll take that as a quarter/semi-final prediction, but obviously,
yeah. Well, I think again, the thing is, when you're away from the game, I got no idea. Yeah. Honestly, I've got no idea because I don't watch. You don't hear what's happening. Eddie's over there somewhere. He takes a team up to Darwin. He picked a different captain, total different. He said, after the Bledisloe Cup, it's great to have Tate McDermott as captain. And next week he drops him as captain. So Eddie changed his mind every 5 seconds. So if he changes that, how are we supposed to know what's? You just got to watch the game and see how they perform. Yeah. Game by game.
Yeah, of course. It would be great to have you back on after the Rugby World Cup when.
Yep, definitely.
I'll try and come up with some better jokes.
Yeah, Chewy will work on his chat.
Yeah, they're pretty ordinary, but that's fine. Okay.
David.
Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
Cheers, David. Brilliant.
Hey, thanks for your time, David. Thank you.
Anytime, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's edition of the Rugby Paper Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on whichever podcast platform you use and recommend the show to your friends. The Rugby Paper is available to buy every Sunday. And to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe through our print, digital and online options at therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions. That's therugbypaper.co.uk/subscriptions to get all our content for as little as 14p per day.